welcome to Race for the White House, a show where we get you the latest from the US elections. On today's show, we'll tell you how Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are preparing as the election campaign enters its final stretch. Also on the show, we'll tell you why Joe Biden thinks Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu might be trying to influence the US election. All of this and much more, so let's get started. The countdown has begun as the race for the White House is reaching its climax. Now, with less than a month until the US presidential poll, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are in a frantic dash to the finish line. Both candidates are pulling out all the stops to sway undecided voters and energize their base. And the stakes could not be higher, and the outcome remains as unpredictable as ever. Donald Trump is holding massive rallies in key battleground states, while Vice President Kamala Harris is flooding the media with interviews and appearances. Now it's a high-stakes sprint to the finish line, with both sides vying for the crucial votes needed to claim victory. Republican candidate Donald Trump is doubling down on his America First agenda. Now you see, Trump's path to the presidency has always been built on his ability to command huge crowds. And now, in the final weeks of the campaign, he's hitting the roads harder than ever. Over the weekend, Trump held major rallies in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, two states he must win if he hopes to return to the White House. Now, Wisconsin, in particular, is a crucial battleground state. Trump lost the state to Joe Biden in 2020 by just 21,000 votes, so he is pouring everything into rallying his base there. Pennsylvania is another must-win for Donald Trump. Trump returned to Pennsylvania Saturday, where an assassination attempt nearly claimed his life in July. Now, speaking to a massive crowd from behind bulletproof glass, Trump questioned whether his political opponents were behind the attack or not. Billionaire Elon Musk made an appearance alongside Trump, emphasizing the importance of battleground state. Now, Musk urged the crowd to register to vote, stressing the importance of Trump's victory to preserve democracy in America. Now, while Trump is playing to massive crowds in battleground states, Kamala Harris is taking a different approach, dominating the media. Over the past week, Harris has made appearances on morning shows, podcasts, radio interviews, and more, and reaching out to key voting blocs like women, youth, and minority voters. Now, Harris has been everywhere. She's been on The View, giving an emotional take on reproductive rights. She's done sit-down interviews with CNN, NBC, and even hopped on TikTok to appeal to younger voters. Now, Harris knows the race is tight, and she's doubling down on what she does best, connecting with people through the social media. Now, Harris has made Gen Z and millennials a key part of her final push, focusing on social issues like climate change, student debt, and LGBTQ rights. Her team is hoping that by appearing on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, she'll engage younger voters who could be the deciding factor in the swing states. But will this outreach actually get younger people to the polls? The Harris campaign is betting big on it. With only weeks to go now, both campaigns are ramping up their efforts in the final stretch. Trump's team is planning more rallies in key states, while Harris is expected to make more media appearances. It's a race against time, and both campaigns know that every vote counts in this razor-tight contest. Could West Asia peace be held hostage to electoral politics? That's the burning question US President Joe Biden is grappling with. In a striking move, Biden has openly expressed doubts about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of ongoing peace negotiations. Now, Biden says that Netanyahu may be intentionally dragging out talks in an effort to sway the US election. Ever since the Israel-Hamas war broke out on October 7 last year, US has been playing a crucial role in the truce deal. However, Biden is now hinting that Netanyahu might be using the peace process as a political tool, now slowing down the deal to potentially boost Donald Trump's chances in the upcoming US election. Biden's remarks have sparked speculation that Netanyahu could be hoping for a Trump return. Trump has historically had a close relationship with Netanyahu. The two leaders have often worked hand in hand on key policies during his presidency. Now, under Trump, the US moved its embassy to Jerusalem, and Trump also facilitated the Abraham Accords, now which saw the normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab states. And this isn't the first time Netanyahu's ties to the US politics have come under the microscope. Now, under Trump, Netanyahu enjoyed an unprecedented level of support from the White House. And now, as the 2024 US election approaches, some analysts believe that Netanyahu might prefer to negotiate a peace deal with the Republican administration. A Trump camp could be more aligned with his hardline policies on Hamas and the Palestinian territories. Moreover, Trump's West Asia strategy was also seen as highly favorable to Israel. A second Trump presidency might offer Netanyahu more leeway in future negotiations. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is pushing hard for a swift resolution to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Now, for weeks, US diplomats have been working behind the scenes, urging Netanyahu's government to accept a ceasefire. The situation in Gaza has grown increasingly dire, with humanitarian organizations warning of a crisis on the ground. Over 40,000 people have died in the conflict. International pressure is mounting on all parties involved to bring an end to the violence. But despite this push, progress has stalled, leading to growing frustration within the White House. Now, Biden is concerned that the longer the conflict drags on, the more it could be manipulated for political purposes. For the Democrat camp, the stakes are personal and political. As Kamala Harris fights for the top post, the possibility that an unresolved conflict in Gaza could influence the US voters has become a growing concern. Now, the US election could hinge, in part, on the handling of international crisis, including the Israel-Hamas conflict. And a ceasefire or a peace deal in the coming weeks could be viewed as a major diplomatic victory for Biden, unless it's intentionally delayed. Now, as the US election draws closer, Biden administration is racing against the clock to see whether a peace agreement between Israel and Hamas can be reached. But with Netanyahu's political calculations and Trump's lingering influence in the background, the future of the peace talks and their impact on US election remains uncertain. So for more on this, now we're being joined by a White House correspondent, Rohit Sharma from the US. Rohit, Biden has openly acknowledged that Netanyahu's lack of interest in getting a ceasefire deal done. What do you have to say on this?
Well, look, I think Biden, has publicly now acknowledged what we've been talking at India Today Global, and have been reporting here from Washington, D.C., that something seems off. One of the reasons why some people here in Washington, D.C., feel that the ceasefire seems elusive is the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu obviously believes that his cause and his motives would be best served with a Republican president, which is President Trump. Remember, not too long ago, he made a trip to Washington, D.C., and he went to Mar-a-Lago and he actually met with President Trump. So it appears that President Biden has acknowledged this for the first time and put this in public domain. And we've heard about the ceasefire for the longest time through the summer. We got really closed during the DNC in August. And then there was apparently this deal that was still trying to get worked out 2 weeks ago when they said it was almost 90% complete. So yes, I think President Biden has finally spoken about it, which the rest of the Washington has been talking about for a while.
So, how do you think this will actually impact the US voters? Do you think this will swing the votes?
Well, not really interference. I think you don't want to call it interference because it's not directly interfering in the US election. I mean, yes, the actions of Israel may have an impact on how voters decide and think. And it would be it would be foolish to think that the Israelis do not know that. They're very well aware of what a ceasefire could do to swing the elections one way or the other. So it is, it is one of those things where you cannot really blame Israel because, even if you talk to them, they would tell you they're watching out for their own interests. So yes, and if you talk to a Democrat, they would feel like Netanyahu is interfering in the U.S. election by not getting this ceasefire deal done. So it's how you look at things. If you ask somebody, objectively looking at this, yes, it is an election year. Yes, this will impact election. But is this the only reason why the Democrats think they cannot win? I think that's the broader question that the Democrats need to answer.
Okay, my last question to you is, how worried do you think Democrats are about the lack of a ceasefire, and what do you think they can do?
Well, look, exact 30 days to go to the election. there is a possibility, a number of possibilities that what can and cannot happen between now and November 5th. We've seen the escalation in the Middle East. Can the U.S., or President Biden play a role to end the crises? Could there be a last-minute ceasefire agreement? I mean, all those things potentially have some weight or the other to potentially swing the independent voters. But look, at this point in time, I think Democrats have more things to worry about. They have to worry about getting their voters out to vote. There are deadlines that every state has for registering people to vote. They've got to make sure that young people register to vote. They also have to make sure that they somehow are able to convince voters in Michigan to vote for Kamala Harris. So there are a lot of fires out there that they need to put out, and I honestly think that this obviously could have been one of those things that could have helped them, but definitely not something that could just swing the election towards Republicans.
All right, Rohit, thank you so much for speaking to us, and we'll be coming back to you for more updates on US elections. The Kennedy clan is once again making headlines, and not for their politics but for their never-ending romantic sagas. And this time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is taking his turn in the spotlight with a scandal that's got everyone talking. The Kennedy love train has derailed again. From JFK's infamous affair with Marilyn Monroe to Ted Kennedy's Chappaquiddick incident, now this family has a long history of love affairs gone wrong. And just when we thought they might have learned their lesson, RFK Jr. steps in with an alleged affair that's lighting up the tabloids. Now, RFK Jr., who's married to actress Cheryl Hines, is presently embroiled in a scandal over a reported affair with New York Magazine reporter Olivia Nuzzi. Now, Nuzzi was hired as New York Magazine's first ever Washington correspondent in the year 2017, and she's known for her deeply reported features and exclusive interviews. She even penned a profile of Kennedy in November that said his campaign had the potential to turn the presidential race upside down. And you might remember that Kennedy ended his independent run for president in August, and he's now endorsing Donald Trump. Now, if you look back at John F. Kennedy, he's remembered for his charisma and historic presidency. But JFK's alleged affair with Monroe continues to captivate imaginations to this day. But many insiders say that Monroe wasn't the only one. Now, JFK reportedly had flings with secretaries and socialites as well. It's almost like running the country wasn't enough of a challenge for him, and he had to juggle a few love affairs on the side too. But if you thought JFK was the only Kennedy with a wandering eye, think again. Now, it's widely speculated that after JFK's assassination, RFK Sr. became close to Monroe as well. And some conspiracy theorists even believe that Monroe's tragic death was somehow tied to her relationships with the Kennedy brothers. Now, it seems like being a Kennedy comes with two things: political ambitions and a never-ending cycle of romantic disasters. Some say the Kennedys are cursed, and when you look at their history, it's hard to argue. But when most people focus on tragic incidents, it's the family's long list of affairs that adds to their mystique. From JFK's rendezvous with Monroe to RFK's rumored involvement with the same. Now, the Kennedy brothers lived lives of romantic intrigue that could rival any soap opera. Now, whether it's JFK and Monroe or RFK Jr. keeping the tradition alive, one thing's for sure: when it comes to love, the Kennedy men have left a trail of broken hearts and scandalous headlines behind them. Now it's time to talk in numbers. With less than a month remaining for the US presidential polls, the race for White House is becoming quite intense. And now Vice President Kamala Harris is maintaining a narrow lead nationally and a neck-to-neck battle in the swing states. So let's take a look at how presidential contenders are faring in polls today. According to the New York Times poll, Harris is leading in the national poll with an approval rating of about 49%, while Trump is trailing at 46%. In the swing state of Michigan, Harris is maintaining a lead at 49%, while Trump is at 47%. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania and Nevada, Harris is again at a narrow lead with about 49% rating, while Trump is at 48%. In the swing state of Wisconsin, Harris is maintaining a lead at about 50%, while Trump is at 48%. In the state of Arizona, Trump has taken the lead with about 49% rating, while Harris is now at 47%. And in the states of Georgia and North Carolina, Trump is leading with about 49% rating, while Harris is at 48%. So now, with just a few days remaining for the elections, it looks like the polls are swinging from left to right every day. Time now for some quick updates from the political landscape in the United States you might have missed. First up, Elon Musk's mother, May Musk, is facing criticism for her social media post. Now, she's asking Americans to cast their vote using fake names during the US presidential polls 2024. And according to her ex post, May suggested that voters use 10 fake names and vote 10 times. And she also claims that it is not illegal and the system should work accordingly. Now, netizens have asked Federal Election Commission and Federal Bureau of Investigation to look into the matter. Moving on, Kamala Harris is making a push to reach key voters ahead of the election November 5th. Now, Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are set to make scores of television and podcast appearances this coming week. And this includes Call Her Daddy podcast and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Now, plans also include appearance on ABC News The View and CBS News The Colbert Show. Now, Call Her Daddy and The View have large female audiences, a voter blog that favors Harris over the former President Donald Trump. And finally, Donald Trump has announced that he would form a task to keep an eye on woke generals and do away with diversity training for military personnel. Now, Trump is no stranger to attacks on the military for being woke, despite its tradition of being non-partisan. In fact, in office, Trump was also quick to criticize what he saw as left-wing causes in the military, and this includes banning many trans people from serving in the armed forces. So that's all we have for you in this edition of Race for the White House. Stay tuned to India Today Global for more updates on US elections.